Good morning. All right. So I think I'll make it a little bit of adjustment. I'm getting cut off here, but I guess I'm okay. I'm on this side. I want to make sure you guys get a good picture of what's going on here. All right. I'm going to lift the camera up just a bit. Just a bit. So that hopefully, let's see here. All right. So, yeah. So this should work. Okay. This should work pretty good. Okay, so welcome. My name is Gus Ortiz. I am the KW Commercial Director and KW Productivity Coach here in our Market Center. And this is the Ortiz Anomaly podcast. Today I'm doing something a little different, just to try something new. This is actually one of the tools that we use. Both for new, and I currently actively use it in my business. These are tools that we use to help us focus on the things that are going to actually move our business forward. This is a I'm going to try to see if I can fit this into an hour. I should be able to, but so basically, this is what's called our GPS and 411. So the GPS is goals, priorities, strategies. The idea behind this is to identify where we're going. So that's our goal. We want to identify what priorities are we going to be taking. So primarily, this is going to be like the methods in which we're going to generate business, which is going to be our priorities. And it doesn't mean we can't do other things, but these elements are going to be priorities. And then the strategies for each of those priorities to ensure that we are successful at actually fulfilling those priorities. And then those priorities are done so that we can reach our goal. So that is sort of CEO big picture thinking. And then we're going to get into what's called our 411. So the 411 is basically breaking down all the activities that we need to do in order to fulfill our goal. What are the activities that we need to do? And then from there, how do we break that down, not only over the course of the entire year, but how do we break that down so that we can kind of get a sense of what our week looks like? Because there's essentially, the way that I think about this, right, there are essentially two different parts of the brain that are operating when you are a business owner. There is the CEO version, which is the dreamer, the person who has the big picture, the idea person, the one who is looking at the mile in the sky, looking down, trying to map out what the business looks like, right? And you need that person. You need to have that person in your brain to kind of fulfill the goal, right? If your goal is to have this sort of big picture idea, this whatever it is, you need to have a visionary, right? And if you don't have that, or if you're not comfortable with that, you might want to partner with someone who is that, and maybe you are more of the operations person, which is sort of the logistics person. But generally speaking, you kind of have sort of big picture thinking. What is it? What would that I'd like to see? And then you have the person or people that are going to be executing actual activities to ensure that big picture happens. So you have sort of like the quote unquote employee version of you. So you have the CEO version of you, and then you have the employee version of you. And, I like to think of it that way, at least for me, because it allows me to hold myself accountable. It makes it a little easier for me to hold myself accountable. The CEO version of me assigns the employee version of me tasks, and then now those tasks have to be done on a regular basis in order for me to achieve my goal. If I'm not achieving those, if I'm missing those tasks, then I got to reevaluate like what's happening, what's getting in the way of my day-to-day that is preventing me, the employee version of me, from doing those weekly tasks. And that helps me out. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best system or this is the system that's going to help out everybody, but this is a system that's helps me out. It's helped out, I'm sure thousands of others. This is not a system that I created. It's a system that already exists. I just have implemented it into my business, and it's been very helpful. So hopefully, if this is something that you decide to do, it'll help you as well. So let me kind of break it down for you and what this whole process looks like. Okay. All right. First and foremost, what we're trying to figure out, just lock these down so they don't go scooting all over the place. What we need to figure out is our GPS. This is going to be our goal, right? So we start in the GPS, we start with our goal. Okay. And the goal can be any number of things. Typically, it's money. Typically, is how much money do I want to make on a given, week or day or whatever the case may be, right? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to identify a financial goal that I would like to achieve. I'm not like a multi-millionaire or anything like that. I just, I have my goals. I make decent money, and I want to try to see if I can kind of identify like how can I increase my ability to make more money. That's kind of where I'm at right now, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just use 250,000 as my financial goal. Let's say, for example, right? I'd like to make $250,000. This is over the course of a year. So that's my goal. Nice and simple, easy. That's the easy part. Identifying the goal is the easy part. Now we got to figure out, well, what priorities am I going to be utilizing in order for me to achieve this goal? Well, I have essentially, there's two parts of my business, but I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to say this is just the one. I'm going to focus on the commercial real estate side. So on the commercial real estate side, for example, I might have 3 different ways to generate business. And typically for priorities, you want to kind of keep it to 3, maybe 4 priorities so that is going to be your ideal focus. Not to say you can't do other things, but you want to kind of make it as clean and as focused as possible so that you can ensure that you're not doing 1,000 things mediocrely, right? You don't want to kind of do things that are kind of half-assed because you don't have time or you're just trying to rush through them. So we're going to focus on three ideal priorities for my business. So I know, for example, referrals is one of the ways that I generate really good business. So I want to make sure that referrals is on my list of priorities. Referrals, I want to make sure I spelled that right. Referrals is on the list of my priorities so that I ensure that I can continue to get business that way. So I'm going to build a strategy around referrals. Now, this big picture. This is not going to get into the nuts and bolts. It's just going to kind of give me a picture of where I'm going to be going. Now, another strategy that I am actively using is I would say mailers. So I do use mailers. I know some people are hip on mailers. Some people are not hip on mailers. I use mailers. It seems to work for me. And I have a specific strategy that I use for that. So, so I got referrals. I have mailers, which I would say this is probably, honestly, this is mailers. I'm going to say this is more of a strategy. I'm going to say this is more farming, right? So I'm going to say farm. I think that's a little bit more the strategy that I'm using. Mailers is a part of that. So, all right. So we got referrals, we got farm, and I need a third leg in order for me to generate business. So one of the other ways that I do that is through social media and content creation, right? So content is another way that I generate business. So now now that I have these 3 different pieces, these 3 different legs. So a couple things to note. If you have to know in terms of when you're identifying which strategies to use. You have to be aware of the time scale for each one. So, for example, if you are new in real estate, let's say, and it doesn't matter what the business is. If you're just getting your feet wet into entrepreneurship in general, right? The ways that you want to generate money, you want to focus on ways that are going to be the fastest way for you to generate the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, right? That's the ideal. Now, once you kind of establish your business, and you have some things going on for you, you have income coming in, you can be a little bit more flexible with your time frame. So for example, farming takes a longer time for it to turn into business, because you're basically reaching out to people that you don't know if they're looking to actually do business. You're reaching out to a bunch of people that maybe fit a certain criteria for potentially doing business with, but they haven't risen their hand to do business. I'll give a real estate example so that you can kind of get a sense of it. So for example, if you're in real estate, a short and fast way to generate business is going to be things like expired and canceled listings, right? For sale by owners, open houses, right? Those are examples of really short cycle opportunities. And the reason why they're short cycle is expired and canceled. Well, these are people that raised their hand, they listed their property with somebody, and then they canceled their agreement, or their agreement expired for whatever reason, and they weren't able to get their home sold. Well, that's an opportunity, because we don't know why they weren't able to sell their home. It could be they canceled because they weren't happy with their previous realtor. Maybe they had some personal challenge that didn't allow them to stay on the market, and they weren't necessarily bought in to the person that they were using, right? Maybe it expired because it was overpriced, and the agent was just not was not skilled enough to be able to convince the seller to make that adjustment to meet the market. And sometimes it's the seller themselves may not have been willing to adjust their price point, right? So they kind of had to learn the hard way. So it's a number of different factors that could play, right? For sale by owners, kind of similar. They're actively looking to sell their home, but they are just not confident that a realtor is going to be able to help them. But they are actively looking to sell their home, right? And then you have open houses. These are people that are actively looking at homes, most of the time for the purpose of trying to figure out if they want to buy a home. Sometimes they're hot and ready to rock and roll and buy something right away. Sometimes they're just exploring the idea of wanting to buy a home. So these are people that are actively looking to do a transaction in the very near future. So that's why these are considered short opportunities. These are opportunities that can come right away, right? So if you are starting your business, you want to be thinking about what are going to be short opportunities, the ability for you to generate the most amount of business in a short amount of time. Now, the challenge is sometimes people don't like doing those kinds of things as part of their business. They may not like calling expireds and cancels. They may not like working with for sale by owners. They may not like doing open houses constantly. So, excuse me. So that being the case, sometimes you kind of have to do something that you need to do in order for you to get to a place where you can do the things that you prefer to do. And of course, for me, these are the things that I prefer to do because I've already built a business. I can work heavily with referrals because I have previous clients that I've worked with. I have agents that I work with, that I've built relationships with. I have a farm that I've already been working on. I have content creation that I've been doing for some time. So these are things that, even though it may take 9 months to a year to turn into business, well, because I've been churning this for some time, this gives me the opportunity. I can get away with putting this as my lead pillars, right? As the lead pillars, my priorities, because I have business that's coming in. And even though it's going to take me some time to get this stuff going, or if let's say I'm just starting, or changing my pillars to these things, I already have ongoing business. And for me, my worst case scenario is I can always shift one of these into a short-term lead generating opportunity if I need to. Now, I feel like I'm in a good position where I don't have to. So these 3 pillars feel really comfortable for me. So you're going to have to do the same thing for you and your business. So just keep that in mind. All right. So for referrals, now that I have this sort of priority that I want to focus in on, I want to identify the strategy. So you have your goals, which is your priorities, which we just identified, and now we got to figure out some strategies for each of these lead pillars. So for referrals, I definitely want to make sure that I'm doing quarterly engagements, right? quarterly engagement. Oops. Be nice if I knew how to spell. Okay, so these will probably be calls, right, or texts, right? I probably want to figure out a way. I've been thinking about this a lot, and maybe even doing some kind of an annual event. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but it's an idea that I think would be nice to kind of maybe do some kind of event and invite anyone who's ever sent me a referral. And doesn't have to be big; it can be small. It doesn't have to be huge. But I'm thinking, it could be a barbecue or a pool party or whatever, right? Just it could be a wine and cheese event. It can be something at a restaurant that I do. So just some kind of annual event. And then, maybe some things like I know, doing some, holiday cards, just so I stay top of mind. Some other things that I can do for referrals is if I can send them business, find opportunities to send them business. Right? And then maybe send them resources. Send them resources. Let me think here. Okay, so that's just some ideas. There may be more that may come up, so I may come back to that, but I want to kind of keep things moving. So for my farm, I had mentioned mailers, so definitely going to do some mailers there, right? One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to do mailers. We're going to do some follow-up calls to the mailers, right? I actually did the mailer is regarding repositioning. So doing a repositioning analysis. So the idea here is that I can show my commercial farm how they can reposition their property so that they can make more money, either through cash flow or through, let's say they wanted to sell the property. I can increase the value of the property by repositioning the property. And we do an analysis to identify how to do that. So I'll send out a mailer about it. I'll have some follow-up calls about repositioning. I'll do an explainer video, which I actually already have in place, that kind of explains what repositioning is. And then we try to see if we can schedule appointments, right? This is going to be that. So I have an appointment scheduler. So I'm actually I've hired an appointment scheduler. I feel like I can't spell this morning. I've hired an appointment scheduler to help me with this process. So as it relates to my farm, this is going to be a part of what I do. Now, in addition to that, I think what I'd like to do is go ahead and put together some social marketing, right? And then I think I really want to do I want to get into, because I feel like my brand needs some work. So I want to go ahead and revisit my brand. Okay. And a lot of that is around like, well, what exactly I'm going to be doing. The other thing that I also want to do is I want to get hot and heavy into 1031 exchanges. So 1031 exchanges is the ability to basically trade real estate. And it's a really good method if you have, for example, an asset that requires some capital improvements. You don't want to necessarily spend the money on those capital improvements, and you just want to exchange it out for another property that doesn't require capital improvements, but has either the same or maybe even better cash flow, but you don't have to worry about having to do improvements to the property. So this, I think, will tie in really well to repositioning, because repositioning is the idea of spending some money to improve the property to get better cash flow or potentially to sell it for more money. A 1031 exchange oftentimes will be for someone who doesn't want to necessarily spend the money to improve the property, but still doesn't want to have to go through the process of improving the property, right? They don't want to spend the money to improve the property for cash flow or for resale. They just want to get a better property. They want to up their ability to generate cash flow, but they don't want to spend the money to improve the property. They'd rather just exchange it out for a better property and then get rid of the property and not have that liability at all. So I think these two will work really well. I'll probably follow the same process of mailers with follow-up calls, explainer video, have an appointment scheduled for that, and then include that as part of my social marketing and my brand. So I think this is going to be the way that I'm going to be looking at my farm. All right, so for content creation, part of it is going to be doing podcasting, kind of like what I'm doing now, right? Podcasts. And then posting weekly, maybe even daily, if I can get that going, right? So, and then what am I going to be posting? I'd like to post clips, like shorts. I'm thinking like of me either teaching a class or just me kind of commenting on real estate. Perhaps just photos that are relevant. Photos that are let's see. I'll just say photos for now. And then maybe some resources, tips, tricks, stuff like that, right? So that's kind of like what I'm thinking for the sake of content. Now, I would like to put together maybe some. So this is going to be a combination of shorts, and then I'd also like to have some other long form besides the podcast, long form content, right? And this might be like tutorial videos. Something in the realm that I would feel comfortable doing. I think tutorial videos would be a good way for me to leverage content. So this is just kind of some ideas. This is kind of what we would be doing. So we'd focus heavily on trying to really build this out as deep as possible, build this out as deep as possible, build this out as deep as possible. These are going to be the primary pillars in which I'm going to generate business. And the goal here is to make sure that I keep really focused on the things that I feel is going to bring me the most benefit from my activities. Now that I've kind of created a goal, I've identified my 3 priorities, and I've put together some strategies that are going to be assisting me in developing each of these priorities. The next thing that I need to do is I need to figure out, well, how do I turn this into day-to-day activity? Well, one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a value in terms of, let's say, transactions. So let's say, for example, the average transaction is $1 million, let's say, right? $1 million, right? And then let's say, hypothetically speaking, the average commission that I get on these transactions is 3%. Okay, it's just a assumption. Let's say 3%. Well, 3% of $1 million, right? That is going to be $30,000, right? So if we do some quick math, to get to 250, so really that'd be somewhere around like 9 transactions. 9 will give us just above, that'll give us 270. So that's 9 transactions, right? So this equals about, let's say 8.5, 8.5 transactions, but obviously we can't do 8.5 transactions. So we're just going to go ahead and round that up to 9 transactions. Okay. And then because there's a good chance, especially in commercial, that transactions fall apart, I'm actually going to up that and assume that maybe 20% of them are going to fall out, even though I'm going to say 30% because I want to be super conservative. So that's 3 deals of the 9 might fall apart. So if that's going to be the case, I'm going to add 3 deals to this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and up this to 9 plus, so 12 transactions. So that's what I want to focus in on. I want to do 12 transactions, And that is hopefully, even if 3 fall apart, I still end up with 9, which gives me my 270. So I'm planning on 30% roughly of these transactions falling apart. Okay. Of course, when you do the math here, that might be slightly less, but you understand what I'm saying, right? So I'm planning on some transactions falling out so that I can still hit my goal. This is assuming that $1 million is my average price point on a commercial transaction. If you're doing more traditional home sales, for example, in Central Florida, we're seeing, I think the average home price is somewhere around 425,000. So that you would put 425,000, multiply that times whatever you feel like you can get for your commission, and then that number is what's going to be your average commission price point. A good way to do this if you're already in business is to just go back to your previous transactions, see what you've been doing, and that kind of will give you in terms of what your average price point is and what your average commissions are. And then that'll give you an idea of where you're starting at. Okay. Now, of course, you can increase that. And that's fine. And maybe that's part of what one of your strategies is to start looking in communities that have higher price points. But just for the sake of understanding how many transactions you need, this is the way that I think is the best way to do that. Now, if you have another type of business, you'll have to figure that out, right? How many engagements, how many things, how many widgets do you need to sell? How many services do you need to sell? You need to figure out what that is, right? Because I work with big ticket items, my number is relatively small. I got to do 12. I got to sell 12 of these big ticket items. So essentially, guys, it's ultimately 9. But my attempt is to get at 12. Hopefully, I can get 12. If I can get 12, great. But if I'm not able to, if I can get at least a 9, then 9 transactions will get me to my $250,000 number, right? But that's obviously going to take work. Okay, so now that I know that, I got 12, right? I got 3 different ways that I'm generating business. I'm going to go ahead because I feel like each of them have probably about the same amount of opportunity for me to generate business from. So I'm going to go ahead and say that just do 4 transactions from referrals, 4 transactions from farming, and 4 transactions, right, from content creation. And this will give me my 12 transactions. Now, again, this is estimating. There's no way for me to know for sure that I'm going to get 4 from content, 4 from farming, and 4 from referrals. It may be completely off base. But for the sake of making sure that I give each of them an equal amount of time, I want to make sure that I'm identifying how I'm going to do it. Now, you might find that if you already have historical knowledge on what works better, you may know that your referrals do way better than these other things. You might give a little bit more emphasis on referrals. You might say 6, and then over here you might say 3 and 3, right? Because you know that your referrals are really strong lead generating pillar for you. So you have to figure out what works for you. For me, I think this will work fine. Referrals do work really well for me, but I do feel like these are pretty strong, and I'm going to be really working heavily to hit these goals for each of these. So these will be the way that I want to try to get my transactions. Now, this is again just an estimate. As you go through your year, you might find that these things change and you might have to put more focus on one over another. If you find that referrals, for example, are really killing it for you, you might decide that, you know what, I'm going to put a little bit less attention on content and farming and focus on referrals, just as an example. So I work off of the 12-week year, which is a whole other thing that we talk about. So essentially every quarter, I'll reassess what I'm doing and then make adjustments every quarter. So I'll do something like this every single quarter and see that, hey, are we still on track based on the numbers or goals that we had for the year? So that's kind of the idea. All right. Now that we've kind of identified our goals, we've identified our priorities, we've identified the strategies for each, and we've given each of those a value. Now I want to figure out, well, what activities do I need to do in order for me to generate business, right? In order for me to generate business. So I'm going to go ahead and put under here at the bottom of this. I think you guys can still see that. Yeah. So this is our 411. Okay. And basically it's called 411 because it's basically 4 weeks. There's an assumption for per month, right? So obviously some months have 5, but it's just easier to kind of do the math this way. So what's going to happen each of those weeks? there is what's going to happen each month, and then what's going to happen over the course of the year. So in terms of activities. So we're going to look at this and kind of identify how are we going to, like, what activities have to happen. So we know we need to have quarterly engagements. These are going to be calls and texts to referrals. So now I got to figure out, well, how many people do I have in my database for referrals? So I have, I would say about 100 people that I would say probably closer to 150 people. So I'm going to say 150 people. So there's about 150 of these guys. I have to do the actual numbers, so I'll do the numbers to get that for sure. But let's say it's 150. I know I have about 150, and I have to make quarterly calls. That means I have to do 150 times 4, right? So 150 times 4 is 600. So I need to do at least 6. Oops, let me just make sure that this is it's clear what I'm doing here. This is going to be annual. Annual. I need to do 600 quarterly calls, right? So I'm doing 600. This is going to be calls and text messages. Right? So I know I need to do that. I'm going to do one annual event. Okay. Holiday cards. So there is, let's do the big holidays. So we're looking at 4th of July. You know, the holidays that I think are, I try to stay away from anything that's too religious because you never know what religion people follow. So I'm going to say 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving is a good one. New Year's is a good one. You could probably get away with Christmas. Everyone kind of celebrates Christmas now, even if they don't necessarily celebrate it the same way. I think those are it. I'm not going to really do like Valentine's Day or anything like that. But let's say there's 6. So we got 6 holidays that we're going to be doing over the course of the year. To the holiday cards, to 150 people, right? So that's 150. That would be times 6. So that is, let's see, 300, 600. Let's see, 300, 600, 9. Yeah, 300, 600, 900, 900. So 900 holiday cards. Okay. We want to try to send them business. So we got 150 people. I don't know that I can send 150 pieces of business to my referrals. So I'm gonna try to see if I can get a percentage of that, like find ways to send them business. If I can send, let's see, 25% of them, let's say 30% of them business, I think that would be good. So let me do 30% of them. I send them business. So that means I would have to send 50 pieces of business out, right? 50 types of referrals or connections, 50, not 50%, 50 referrals. Referrals. I'll just say referrals. So send out 50 referrals. Okay. And then send them resources. That'll probably be through email. So I think I will probably, including the calls, I'll also send emails and reference that'll be tied to that. So I'm going to say 600 resources, 600 emails that will be resources. So the resources will only be, there'll be 4 different resources that I'll send 600 times, right? I'm sorry, to send to 600 people. At least that's the idea, right? So I'm going to find 4 resources. And then these are going to be sent. So I need to send 600 emails for this, right? So 4 resources. So each, and then I'm going to send those resources each quarter. So each of the resources, I'll be sending each course. That'll be 600 emails. So for referrals, that'll be that. For mailers, let's see here. We did 400-ish, I'll say 500 mailers. So we're going to do over the course of the year. We're going to do that once a quarter. So that's 2,000 mailers. With the follow-up calls, I mean, I guess we can make the calls. So this is just an idea. This is not an action. This is an action, but this is going to be through my appointment scheduler, which is right here. Again, another idea. So I think that we're going to have to do, I don't know that we can calculate this as a number other than attempts. We can do attempts. So I guess you could do 2,000 attempts, right? So I guess you'd say mailers and